Hey, welcome to 10X Your Team with Cam and Otis. We're a son. Yeah, got some slurring making fun of you the way you talk this morning. We're a father-son leadership podcast where we talk with other lifelong learners about making an impact and solving big problems. And the big problem might be our voices this morning. My tongue's tied up, even though I've been talking with people all morning and phone calls and client calls and all that. And then you were hacking up a couple of lungs earlier.
Oh yeah, got a little bit of crud in the throat, but that's all right. We're just warming up. That's it. You got to get it out early, right?
There
Because
you
you don't
go.
want this happening later on in the podcast. Who cares about the intro, right?
That's the whole point
Except
of the green
probably
room.
everyone who listens, but
Huh. That's the whole point of the green room, right? Green
yes,
you up,
sir.
get you ready to go. Which I don't want to go down that hole, but I was like, what the hell? Why is it a green room? I mean, we got green screen, that makes sense, but why is it a green room? Is that something Johnny Carson started, or uh,
I got no idea on that.
let's do a
All
blank
right,
on the
I
ground?
got research for later.
Yeah, yeah. So we were going to dive into a couple of things ourselves, and discuss our philosophy on transformational leadership. And I wanted to hear what you got to kick us off with that, Camden.
Yeah, definitely. Well, first off, I teased you going back to the green room conversation. I did tease you that I have a little bit of a fun fact. So, did you know that one of our cousins is actually the godfather? I guess you could say the grandfather, whatever you want to put it on. I don't know how they differentiate between those. I'd rather be godfather than grandfather. But anyway, the James McGregor Burns is the one who first came up with the concept of transformational leadership. He studied political candidates back in the 70s and then later applied it to organizational management, those kind of things. But to start off a little bit of history on that, he kind of defined it into basically these two categories of transforming leadership and transactional leadership. And I think it's kind of funny, I even joked about this again in the green room, but transactional leadership, I mean, to us, I think we just call that management pretty much. Transformational leadership is probably what you and I would just call being a good leader, being good at your job. But then later on, a couple other, organizational scientists went through and they came up with these 4 elements of transformational leadership. So the first is individualized consideration, then intellectual stimulation, inspirational motivation, and idealized influence. So those are some big words I know, but I wanted to dive in first, start us off with that individualized consideration. Really just basically speaking to the individuals in the team rather than just barking orders at from the top down. So I want to throw that over to you, Dad. Talk a little bit about why the individual is so important and why, as a leader, showing that that kindness, that care towards those individuals is so important to being a transformational leader.
Uh, Part of it is because group punishment never really works, uh, and it just made me think the Putin's main rival that just died in prison, Nanolise, I think is it Nanolise was his name. And one of the things is I was reading about that prison way up above the Arctic Circle in Russia is they do a lot of group punishment in that prison, and there's some because I've been in organizations where group punishment is the was the norm, and there's some parts and pieces to that what it does group punishment, and I'll circle back around to the individual piece of it. But what group punishment does is it doesn't necessarily bring the team together. It pushes the person who may have caused the problem out. It's actually a good measure of the leadership within the organization. So if you want to do a test on your organization and see who the leaders are and who the individuals are, if you do group punishment and group reward, right? Because punishment and reward are the same thing in a sense of what happens. If you do group punishment to an organization, somebody forgot to lock the door or whatever when they left. So you take away everybody's keys. So now nobody can leave, or you do some sort of thing where if one person leaves, everybody has to leave or something like that. So now everybody is punished or held back or frustrated because of that individual. And that's what happens. It targets the individual. The theory was, or is, in group punishment is that then the organization will self-police. The problem is their self-policing becomes an ostracizing. It becomes Lord of the Flies sort of thing, right? Where well, you're crap, you screwed us over, and we're going to beat the crap out of you. You know, it's the old blanket party that we used to do back in the day, and those never work. Nothing good ever comes of that. So
and I think so. Just to kind of build on that, I think going back to the reward side, because they are kind of two sides of the same coin when you really get down to it as a mechanism to kind of boil it down there. If you are only celebrating one individual, you are not celebrating the team. You're only putting that top performer on the pedestal, and you're not giving anyone else their credit. You're not, showing that you care about what their job is or care about their impact inside of the team. Well, we all know what happens to the tallest blade of grass, right? It gets cut. And it's the exact same kind of mechanism, the Lord of the Flies type thing that you're talking about there. Nobody wants that one top performer who's standing up over everybody, kind of, showing off for everybody and getting all that reward also. You got to make sure that you're, finding that balance between the two.
Yeah. And that's very true. When you talk about individualized rewards versus, hey, the whole team grew, there's time and place for both. And you do awards and recognition, you should always recognize the individual, but the individual, if he's truly a team player, will also recognize that he couldn't have done it without the team. Again, this is, as you are in charge of that organization, this is a good way to look at the leadership and the culture of that organization. If it pulls them together, group punishment, group rewards, pulls them together, then you know that you have a good culture. If it becomes more divisive, and I'm thinking you as a rugby coach, you don't necessarily have a bank, but a bank to send them up, folks. Not that's an old Kiwi term.
Hey, all the 10 Grizzlies who listened to this really got that joke.
Yeah, everybody got that joke. But you do group punishment because the boys on the back line kept dropping the ball, or whatever it may have been, right? Or even something even more individualized, not a unit, but in an individual. It's like, hey, fullback, why'd you miss touch when you kicked? Yeah. So everybody do laps because the fullback missed touch. Now, one of two things are going to happen. If you have strong leadership within your squad, within your team, then they're going to pull everybody together, and it'll almost create, if you're not careful as the coach, it'll almost create an us versus them, players versus coach, which is not good. You have to watch that also. And if you have good leadership, then the good leader will go to that fullback, the team player, your captain will go to that fullback, put their arm around that fullback and say, hey, man, yeah, we're going to run laps, but we're going to run laps so that we can all get better to help you be better in that way, as opposed to the blanket party, sort of approach of, I'm going to beat the crap out of you tonight in the dorm room because you didn't find touch during the game.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think that, thinking about this, we always talk about the similarities between life and sports, and especially rugby. But I think that there is a key difference there, which is that the punishment in those terms for for rugby, for instance, if we're doing push-ups or we're running, we're getting better as a team no matter what. And so it's like that is even though it is a punishment, it is something that moves us forward. Whereas I think if you make people stay 30 minutes late at work, yeah, they're technically working 30 minutes more, but I don't know if you're really getting that much more out of them in that kind of a situation. You have to your point about knowing the team, you have to also understand what those levers are that you're trying to pull. And I think that goes back to the individual aspect, because we're talking about knowing the team, knowing your culture, building that culture up so that you can have those leaders. That's also celebrating each of those individuals and not putting them on the pedestal, but celebrating their actions and how they work as a part of the team. And I think that is such a key distinction. It's not, hey, look at Otis. He just scored 4 tries today. He's killing it out there on the wing, even though, Dad, I don't think you would have been a wing very much. But who knows? You only played a few games. I don't know if you had the speed for out there.
My one breakaway almost made my heart explode. And I think that was a walk that day. I've never played, even when we were shorthanded, I never played in the back line. So.
And it's boring back there anyway. But anyway, as the coach, it's not about, hey, look how great he was doing that. Everyone knows he was great. He just scored. You have a sales guy who just, closed some crazy numbers and is crushing everybody. He knows what he did. You don't need to celebrate the fact that he's scored those tries, that he made all those sales. They understand it. What you need to celebrate as the leader is the individuals who helped lead to that. To take our Otis example. Otis, crushes it. He gets 100 sales this week, to pick an arbitrary number. Well, who got you all those leads? Who got you that, 500 leads that you were able to close 20% of and do such a great job with? Well, then you got to go celebrate the marketing team. Not just the marketing team, but the individuals of that team and how each of them work together. To take one more rugby example before I throw it back to you, Dad, it's like to take a scrum. 8-on-8, contest of strength, one of my favorite parts of the game, of course, as a coach, as a set piece coach. But when you look at the scrum, there's 8 individuals in there. And if you just celebrate the scrum, that's good. Yeah, we're great. We do this. But what gets a kid bought in is talking to them as an individual level. Again, going back to, hey, you did a really good job. The way you bound there and got a little bit tighter, sunk your hips down, that's what made that whole scrum work. And it's not just you did a good job, but you did a good job. You did your job, and look what that did for the team. It's all tying back to the team and the vision for the team.
And that is such a key piece for the individual recognition in an organization. So you have to, as a leader, you have to recognize that you have a team of humans, and humans thrive off of compliments and recognition. Now we all play it off. We did a family show about that a while back, and the how do you accept compliments and how do you handle that? But in the end, when you get that compliment from your boss, even if you think, well, I was just doing my job. Well, guess what? That recognition, that little pat on the back, that little, hey, good job, man. I appreciate what you're doing, makes all the difference in the world in that individual, because each individual, each of us as human beings, want to be respected and want to know that we are contributing to the success of something beyond ourselves. And I think that's part of it, is we are contributing to something that is larger than ourselves. And it is either the top or the second from the top. I think it might be the top block in Maslow's hierarchy of needs triangle. If you think about, food and water, shelter, love, part of an organization, and recognition of your worth is what it boils down to. If you are not recognized for your worth, then you feel like you're just going through the motions and nobody really cares. And that's that individualization that we as leaders have to have. We can't look at the 10 guys on our team and say, hey, everybody's doing good, everybody's keeping it up, great job. But man, it makes a difference if you have a one-on-one time, even just a management by walking around sort of one-on-one time, where you go, hey man, great job on that, or hey, if you could tweak this a little bit more, do this a little bit differently, to go back to the scrum. How about we try changing the angle of your leg as you do the push and the reset? And we start to do that little thing of that individual gets recognition that they're not just lost in the crowd. And I think that's a huge part of being a great leader.
Yeah, I 100% agree. And I think the last piece on that first section, or the first element there of individualized consideration, one of the words that they used in this research article was mentor, which I love so much. Of just taking the time to mentor each individual inside of your team is so important, and showing that real connection. Because even if you are not always working with them so closely, even if they're not this huge performer that's always getting the bonuses and all those kind of things, you still want to show that you have that connection with them. You want to show that everybody in that organization matters. Because if they don't, and you have one person who feels like they don't matter, yeah, they might just wind up ostracized and they kind of fade away, or they pull other people down with them and things start to fall apart. If you don't take care of the entire team, you create a hole in that team. And I think really that segues pretty well into the next element, which was the intellectual stimulation. As a mentor, you need to give them those goals, those challenging goals to work towards. And then you need to make sure that it's something that aligns with their own personality, their own aspirations, and all those kind of things. Could you talk some, Dad, about, and I'm going to be specific on this, could you talk some about aligning the vision to that intellectual stimulation? Because I know you're good at the vision. We talk vision all the time on this show. But aligning that to me as an employee, feeling like I'm getting smarter and getting better at my job, that's a little bit tricky.
Yeah, it is. And it goes back to the individualization of the person and knowing where that person is in life and what it is they want and what they desire and how that fits into the bigger picture of the vision. And I'll go back to the mentoring because I've had some great conversations with some leaders both in business and other organizations in the last couple of weeks. And one of the things we talked about was mentoring. And there's the the formalized tick the box mentoring. There's well, we don't have a program. I'm going to ask you to can I mentor you? Will you be my mentee? And the vice versa of, man, I really respect you as a leader. Would you be my mentor? And there's this whole aspect of that. And one of the things that I find interesting is how little that is done because it's something that can provide so much value to an organization. As a matter of fact, I'm one of my clients. I'm talking with them about implementing a formalized mentorship in their business as they grow because they've talked about it, they've never done it, and they don't even have it in an informal way. And I've worked with some clients that had a formalized mentorship where it was really a going over their annual review was the only mentoring time they did. And that that's just going over the review. That's not mentoring. It's like,
Right.
you did this good, you did this needs to be worked on. Okay. Thanks for the mentorship. uh, so back to the vision, to your original question, because I needed to throw that out there because I think it's such a critical piece that doesn't cost
Yeah.
a business very much to do, but it makes a huge impact on the business. That's how you can get that individual to buy into the vision.
Mhm.
If they understand and you have a conversation about what your vision is, and they truly understand that team member truly understands what the vision is and how that the leader sees them engaged in the vision in the vision. That's the key aspect of it. Is I have to say, hey, Camden, this is how I see you
Mhm.
in this vision going forward. This is where I see you in that thing. It's not, here's my vision, take it or leave it. What do you want to talk about? It's no, this is what I see you becoming. And then you have to determine, as the individual team member, you have to determine whether or not that is what you want. Is that who I am? Is that who I want to be? And you have to make that decision based on who you are. So even as an individual, because you have to lead yourself before you can lead others, as an individual, you have to understand who you are and what you want. What are my values? What's my purpose? What's my vision? And how does that align with the organization's values, purpose, and vision?
And I think that's frankly where it gets kind of scary when you talk about this kind of leadership, because that's a lot of, we talk about the freedom you're giving to people and the freedom to mess things up and how bad it could go. Well, you give your team members, like, let's just take this example. Like, we cast the vision, we define it out of how each team member fits into this vision, how their jobs are going to grow and what this all looks like. And then you hand it out to them. You're like, hey, Otis, take the weekend. I want you to spend some time this weekend really thinking about what you want in your life. And then they come back and they're like, actually, honestly, sir, I want to be a veterinarian. Like, and it's like, what? Like, oh, what the hell is going on here? And you make this huge left turn. Those things can happen when you give people freedom, right? You do have to take that ownership as a leader. But then without going fully down this rabbit hole on it, the other piece of that then goes back to building the team, right? When it comes to the recruiting and your selection process for those team members, making sure that you're leading with this, not, just making that change halfway through. Because if you talk about transformational leadership, if there's an established organization that has a crappy culture, that hasn't done any of these things that we're talking about, and you come in and change it all, you're going to lose some people. That's just a fact, because you are changing a lot. You're not, it's not going to be the same organization, and it shouldn't be. That's what transformational leadership is all about. But I think a key piece there in the mentoring and getting that like intellectual buy-in to the vision is leading them to not only like think independently and trying to foster that, we talk about exercises that do that, like a pre-mortem and those kind of things, but also as the leader, showing that you'll do it too, showing that you're growing, showing that you're taking risks, showing that you're challenging assumptions. And then going back to that first element of transformational leadership of the individuals, getting their feedback, getting their buy-in. The best way to get somebody's buy-in is to help them draw up the plans. If you're going through like that and it's like, hey, Otis, you and I, we're going to research this together. We're going to figure out the best way to do this and we're going to figure it out. I'm in. I'm 100% in, because we're in it together. We're both growing together. You leveled with me, which is a huge thing to do as a leader. And then now we're both going in the same direction, ready to learn. We have that intellectual buy-in. And so that's the real big key for me, is modeling that behavior, taking those risks as the leader, and then using that as a means to solicit that feedback and get that intellectual buy-in.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think it's time to move to the second one, or the third one.
Third one. Yes, sir. I was going to say, I know what that yet meant. But so our third one is inspirational motivation. And honestly, as I was prepping for this episode, Dad, 3 and 4, this is where it gets into just like, are you a leader or not? A lot of these things are like, I can give you the playbook and you can do it. But we get into 3 and 4, it is way more like, do you have the personality for it? Do you have the charisma? Because you talk about inspirational motivation, that's, can you inspire them? Can you motivate your team to work towards those goals? It partially goes back to the vision. I don't want to spend too much on the vision because, again, we talk about vision all the time. But, you have to articulate that vision, and inspire people to pursue it. And it's that inspiration piece where I think a lot of people can fall short. You can come up with this beautiful vision of how great things are and then say, hey, look, and we're all going to do that together. What does that mean? Like, where am I inside of that vision? So I want to throw that over to you, because I think that goes back to the individual aspect of tying the individual into that vision and motivating them. Because I don't want to spend too much time on the personality aspect of it. Because frankly, I think, yes, that's something you can learn, but also that's a little bit of, are you a leader or are you not? Are you somebody who can inspire people? Do you have that charisma?
So I'm going to change your phrasing there, because I disagree with you. It's not, are you a leader or are you not? Are you choosing to lead or do you choose not to? Because I believe that everybody can be a leader and everybody has their own personal style and their authenticity of who they are. Can I get up and do a Tony Robbins clapping and jumping up and down sort of thing to get people motivated in an audience? Yeah, but it wouldn't be me and it wouldn't feel natural. Mm-hmm. But what I can do is I can be emotional in the moment and passionate about something I want to share. I mean, if you think about let's put it in a sports context. I've told you this before, and whenever I gave a pregame or a halftime talk to the team, I never rehearsed it. I never had notes. I would think about the points that I wanted to make, and I would make those points. And the way I made those points was inspirational. It wasn't rah rah. It wasn't jump up and down. Let's go. Let's go. Let's go. It was thought provoking. It's the pattern of speech that I choose and I use and how I present that. That works for me. You have a completely different approach with your team and how you motivate them and how you incentivize. You get to the heart of who they are by the way you present it and the way that you do it. And I think the fundamental thing comes back to is anybody can be a motivator, and we all do it in different ways. You don't have to be the Tony Robbins jump up and down. You don't have to, whenever I think of this, I always think of when I was in air assault school at Fort Campbell, Kentucky, because we used to joke about this. The requirement, the directive was every time our left foot hit the ground, we had to say air assault. And everywhere we went, we had to do double time, which means running. We had to run. So air assault, air assault. And we used to just laugh at it and we said, false motivation is the key to graduation. Because we all knew that because I'm putting my left foot down on the ground and saying air assault, that is not motivating me to work harder, to do more. Maybe there's some private out there somewhere where it does, because I'd be willing to bet they still do that. Air assault school, you listening? You ain't fooling nobody, and you know it. Tradition sucks. Get off of it. How about finding another way to motivate people like they're damn happy to be there and going to be proud to accomplish it. So, boy, I went down that one. I'm going to come back. Where the hell were
on
they?
The happy to be there. On the happy to be there. And I think the other piece of motivation, and you touched on this, I do think there's, and my only pushback is I do think there's an element of charisma that I think is not necessarily a skill, which is kind of what I was saying there, that there is some aspect of like your natural, aptitude towards leadership. I think might be a better way to put it. Not a leader versus are a leader. I think that there's a more nuanced
the right leadership style in the right situation. Right.
There we go.
Somebody that may not have. I was trying to think of somebody. Pete Carroll is a beautiful example. Mm. You look at Pete, and what do you see? You see an old dude, looks kind of nerdy. Pete motivates. He's retired now. I hope you enjoy it, Pete. Looking forward to catching up with you soon. He motivated every one of those teams, and he had his technique and his process. There's other people, there are other coaches on his staff that did the individual thing. They'd come up, sit next to that left tackle, and they'd say, hey, Reggie, you doing okay, man? Reggie, we got to really focus on this, and we're going to have to really get this going, and you understand how that play shaped up and how that's going to help us get to the Super Bowl, right, Reggie? You see that's still motivating, and that's just we look at charisma as the General Patton, the rah sort of thing, but charisma is there in all aspects if you choose to do it in your style.
Mm. Yeah, 100%. And I think also, talking on charisma a little bit more than I thought we would, but it's a good rabbit hole to go down because it matters a lot to leadership. I think that the charisma also just goes back to that individual component of, considering the individual. That's the thing. I remember I had a U.S. history teacher who talked about meeting. If I got his story right, I think it was Bill Clinton that he had met. He was not a fan of Bill Clinton, but he met him at an airport one day or something like that. And
just walking through the airport in Little Rock,
just happened to see Bill Clinton.
Hey, Bill, what's up?
I know. We probably should raise my hand and poke some more holes in that story. But anyway, One of the things he talked about, and I think this is something that you see a lot of politicians, definitely presidents, and people who reach that top level of wherever they are, is they just have this like charisma about them, where it's like he met him in an airport, and it was like, I'm the only person in the world. And that's all that matters there. And it's like, you have this idea that even though you just met him so briefly, the leader of the company, you met him so briefly, it's like, Otis knows who I am. And you start to get those kind of things. That's where a lot of that charisma comes from, because it's really just about that like personal connection. But the other piece of the motivation there, and this is, fastball right down the middle for you, Dad, is the inspirational motivation for your purpose. Understanding the individual's purpose and how that ties into the company's purpose and your purpose as a leader. And so what do you think is, I guess, what do you think is the key to defining that? Maybe it's a process that people need to go through, because purpose is kind of a broad thing. Sometimes people, it gets a little foo-foo, like we like to joke about, right? And it is something that it's like, when you understand your team's purpose, when you understand each individual of that team's purpose, and you can align those together in a way, that's a beautiful place to be.
Yeah. Well, I think I had this discussion yesterday afternoon with the battalion fire chief I was having a beer with, and we were talking philosophical things. And he told me what his vision was, and I was like, "That's great, except that's not your vision. That's your purpose. Mm-hmm. Listen to it." Mm-hmm. So you have to go back and define what purpose is and what vision is, and I'll take the moment to do that right now. A vision is something you set forth for your future that you can achieve. It has an outcome. It is finite. I set my vision to do this. In the next 5 years, we will have this kind of a company, living this kind of a life, working with these kind of a people, because I can set that, I can see that. A purpose is something that fuels you to achieve that outcome of your vision. A purpose does not have an end state. A purpose is fulfillment. And a fulfillment, in the case of your cup, never is full and it never spills over. That's purpose. Your purpose is the thing that fuels you to get up, get your ass out of bed every freaking morning, whether you want to or not, because your purpose says, I want to do this to help others, which is the other key piece of a purpose. Your purpose is not about yourself. Your purpose is about others, serving others. How do I serve others? That's the differentiator. So you have to understand that, number one. You have to understand what purpose is. What do I mean by the word purpose? Because I can't define my own purpose.
Can I jump on?
Yeah, go ahead.
Can I jump on something there just real quick? And I think I got this right. I think this would be a good distinction to help folks a little bit with this, which is the way I always do it in my coaching. I like to say, like, your big picture purpose and then your purpose inside your different life categories. And so just to run that through, if I was going to say my big picture purpose is helping people, then I could go into the coaching world and saying, by helping develop other great leaders, I am helping other businesses. And that's the way I want to help these people, because it makes it a better place for people to work. It makes a bigger impact, all those different kinds of stuff. That all falls under helping people in that specific area. And then, so I would still call that purpose. It's just a more specific version of that purpose, my purpose in that life category. And then to me, the vision would be the difference of, like, I'm going to help 1,000 leaders. Mm-hmm. And kind of putting the number to it. Would you agree with that way of breaking it down?
Yeah, I would change the wording just a little bit, and I would say, like, in my life categories, those are passions, because my passions surmise to become my purpose. That's the way I look at it. A purpose, okay. Your life purpose is an overarching umbrella that everything that you do should fall into that purpose. Even going on vacation with Miss Suzanne should fall into my purpose, because what am I doing while I'm on vacation? Well, I'm resting and recuperating my mind and putting myself in a different environment to come up with different ideas and solutions to what? Fulfill my purpose. Mm-hmm. If I've got a shiny object, my buddy Jason calls me up and goes, "Hey, Otis, dude, I have got one for you." And in Jason's way, let me see if I do my Jason imitation. So we have to call him out. Yes, that's part of the Jason imitation right there. Is he's like, I got this deal. Now, I don't want you to dive into this unless you feel 100% that you're into this and you believe that this is okay for you. But it's a great deal. But don't even think about it if you don't want to, if you're not okay with it falling apart or losing. And I'm like, oh shit, Jason, that's really cool. That's a really good idea. And it's, how do I tie that back? And do I tie that back to my purpose? Because if it's outside of that umbrella, what am I doing? I'm taking time and effort away, our finite time, our finite ability to think through the day and commit to actions to fulfill our purpose. If my purpose is this box and that thing's over here, how truthful am I being with myself in that is part of my purpose?
Mm-hmm.
Then I'm no longer being authentic to myself because I'm like, oh, well, there's a shiny object. I should do that. Woo. Right?
Yeah, and that goes in for the team as well. You know, as the leader, if you follow that shiny object all the time, you're not staying true to your purpose or the company's purpose. Your team is going to sense that. I don't think I need to name him because I've talked about him enough, probably, which I probably shouldn't. But one of my business partners and with Cobra Valley and talking about it, the shiny object syndrome of, oh, let's try this. That was the thing that was breaking up the team because it was like, aren't we doing this thing over here? I thought this was the purpose to build up this and align all that. And then it's like, if you're over here, now I'm not sure if this is my purpose anymore because I see my purpose over here. And so I think that's a really important thing to understand as a leader is that you have to do this too. It's not just about teaching your team how to understand their purpose. You have to understand yours. Like you said, you have to understand yourself in order to be able to lead others. I want to shift us into our fourth area or our fourth element to transformational leadership, which is idealized influence. And, they kind of define this as like basically being a role model, instilling pride in the team. This is another one where I guess, like I said, I think this becomes a little bit more individual of, who are you as a person? Can you instill pride in your team? Are you a role model? I guess that's still very much in your control and it's a skill that you can, work on, but it's something where your team needs to be proud to follow you. No matter if all these things are great, and I mean, just to paint a terrible, terrible picture, but all these things are great. We're in a startup and we see the vision and we are intellectually aligned and bought in with that vision. All those things are great. And the boss, we get there at work every day, 7 a.m. You and I are working 7 a.m., 7 p.m., busting our butts for this project. And the boss is stumbling in, hungover at 10:30. That doesn't inspire me to do anything for this team because he's not as bought in as I am. He's not a role model for it. And, whenever we talk about making a change in the world, whether it's as a leader, inside of your organization or anything else, it all goes back to modeling for me, of modeling that right behavior of what you want for your team. If you go back to the intellectual stimulation, the owner, the leader is the one taking the risk also. That's how you inspire your team to take risk is you take calculated risks as well. So I want to throw that over to you. What do you think is the key maybe to developing that skill of being a role model or, being able to instill that pride, gain that respect and trust in your team?
Well, it's following one of the 5 tenets of leadership that I believe in, which is lead by example. There should never be a do as I do, or do as I say, not as I do attitude in an organization with leaders, because as a leader, you're still part of the team. You just may be the one that's in charge of the team. It doesn't mean that because you're in charge, you get more privileges. Although the military is horrific for that. The big military, big Army, big Navy, Air Force, not as much. It's not quite as stringent in the Air Force, but the Army and the Navy, the differentiations between officer and enlisted. I've always thought, because I was SF and we didn't do that, it was, yeah, I was the dude in charge, but you know what? I was still part of that damn team. And if my team was sleeping over here in this crappy building, which this happened to me one time, we were doing some training on the East Coast and I'm with my team and I'm the officer. I've got a couple of senior NCOs, and then I've got some junior NCOs, non-commissioned officers. The Navy wanted to put us in 3 separate buildings: the officers building, the senior enlisted building, and the junior enlisted building. And I said, no, no, you're not going to do that to us because we're a team. We're all going to be in the same place. We're all going to be in the same hallway working together because that's who we are. And they said, well, the junior guys can't stay in the senior guys and the senior guys can't stay in the officers. So what do you want to do? And I said, well, can you give me a room in the junior enlisted billets? And they're like, oh, you sure you want to do that, sir? I'm like, oh, yeah, goddamn. I'm part of the team.
Yep.
Yeah, my team's over here. If my team is in the shit, they're not my team if I'm not in the shit with them. So that is a foundational belief that I have is you have to lead by example. And by the way, boss, you are boss of nothing without the team. And if you want to be boss of the team, you better act like you're part of the team. So, yeah, I'll leave it at that because that's a whole nother passionate thing that I could talk about because it's not leader and team. They're not two separate entities. The leader's leader of nothing but himself without the team. So you better be part of the team, Mr. Leader. There is no RHIP. Rank has his privileges in the real world. If you want to be successful.
Yeah. And, kind of just wrapping us up, looking at some of my notes, I think one other key that I wanted to kind of, harp on a little bit when it comes to just the transformational leadership concept in general and, all the leadership theories and skills around this is we talked about like the freedom and giving your team that freedom to, freedom to innovate, freedom to experiment, freedom to have the consequences of those experiments, all those different pieces there. I think that one of the keys there as the leader, and it's why we kind of joked about this, but it's why it's, scary to be this kind of a leader, scary to be a good leader, is because you have to give people those kind of freedoms. But the way that you do it properly is not just handing it off. I always reference Torrance Hart. She said this so well on our podcast, years ago, of so many people who are in leadership positions, they're not leaders, will just go hands off and go, oh, I'm just letting them figure it out. And that's the great way to be a good leader so they can be creative in all of this. But you're not giving them the tools. You're not giving them the guidance. You're not giving them the mentorship. You're not giving them everything they need to actually hit those goals. And I know that goes into your trust triad, Dad, but that's such a big piece for me. This, I think, is, selecting the right team members, but then also you have to give them the right guidance, give them everything they need in order to get better at it. If you can't give them that guidance, then you're failing them as the leader. It's not on them as the individual. It's on you as the leader to give them those tools so they can succeed. You give them all the tools and, but to go back to my joke earlier, and they decide they want to go be a veterinarian because this isn't for them. That's all right. Power to you. We say this all the time with rugby at U of A. If it's like, hey, no, we're going this way. If you don't want it, hey, man, love you. Go have fun. Go study and be a dentist, whatever you want. Shouts to Amir. All those kind of things. But it's like, hey,
study.
But it's like you have that, you have that split, and you as the leader have to understand that. You have to be comfortable with that, and you have to give people the guidance so that they can make that choice on their own.
Yeah.
So throwing it over to you, any closing thoughts on transformational leadership?
Careful putting labels before the word leader. It's okay to say I'm a leader who believes in transformational. I'm a leader who understands the individuals. I'm a leader who likes to serve my team. One of my favorites that people use, servant leadership. It's a leader. And you can use all these adjectives to describe what their skill sets might be and what their strengths might be. But either you're leading or you're not, in my book. So lead, follow, or get the hell out of the way. How's that for?
There we go.
I can't remember who said that. I feel like that was a good old-fashioned from the infantry school for boys that we used to joke about it with the follow me patch. Lead, follow, or get the hell out of the way. And, what I learned today, Camden, was that I got to check out Mr. McGregor Burns And it makes me wonder, is he related to the poet, the Scottish poet Burns? Was that a conglomeration of, because remember Burns Night?
Yes, sir.
So McGregor Burns, maybe this guy, maybe he was some shit, you know? The name
Maybe we need to
McGregor
go. Yeah.
and tied to royal, McGregor for royalty and Burns and poetry. Dang, look out, man. Scottish Marcus Aurelius. Where is James at
Yeah.
right now?
I was gonna say, tying that McGregor go a little bit older, a little bit more ancient with those ties to fame, and then you got that Scottish Enlightenment. That's New Age too. You can get both. That's pretty darn good.
There you go. All right, Camden, what'd you learn?
So I got to say, I got two on this one because one is one that's more for me in my coaching, which I like the distinction you made on it of talking about the purpose inside of your life categories as that being your passions. And then what I usually call big picture purpose, I can save myself energy and just call it purpose now. So that's, nice and easy. And that makes a lot of sense there for me. So thank you for that as one of my coaches. But then also, you were talking later on about the, you being a part of the team. If the team is in the shit, then I'm in the shit with them. And one of the things I started thinking about is, you mentioned, the rank doesn't have privileges. That's all very true, but there are different roles. And I think there's a really important distinction there of like to take, myself and the other coaches out there with U of A, to take that as a for instance. The players are in the shit. They're going to be hitting each other. They're going to be running. They're going to be doing fitness. They're going to be doing all this kind of stuff. They're in the shit. It's our job to find our own shit to get into, if that makes sense. Like, because that's the way that you show as a leader. Yes, like let's say, I've got a bad back. You always use the shoveling example. If I literally can't go shovel, I better be making lunch. I better be getting them some lemonade. I better be doing something. You got to find some other work to show that you're contributing to the team still. And I think that's a really important piece there. And also gives me a chance to just to say it once again, because it's just such a beautiful phrase. Just find your own shit.
There you go. There you go. All right, Camden, run us out. Oh wait, let's do a plug for us. We always let our guests.
Yes, sir.
Go. Hey, if you are a small business in the government contracting space, your annual revenue is around $10 million. You have about 10, 15 people, overhead staff, and you've been winning contracts as a subcontractor, and you're now bidding for a prime contract, and your revenue is starting to grow, and you see that threshold of the large business coming up where you're going to have to compete with the SAICs, the CACIs, the Lockheeds, the Boeings, then check us out as a fractional COO. What we do is we reset your business so that you can launch across that graduation stage. It's not a walk. It's not a stroll. It's not a maybe put your toe across. We will help you explode into large business and be competitive through the efficiencies and effectiveness and the culture that we create for your business. So go to 10xyourteam.net and click on the button that says Fractional COO to learn more and set up a call with us. We will help your business explode into growth. Now, Camden, run us out.
That feels more natural that way. It did feel a little weird, that throw to me. I gotta be honest. Yeah. All right. Thank y'all for listening to today's episode of 10X Your Team with Cam and Otis. Remember, you can watch full episodes of the show on YouTube at 10X Your Team. And if you enjoyed today's episode, please make sure to pass along to other lifelong learners in your tribe so they can enjoy it too. Follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn. As always, the full archive of episodes available at www.10xyourteam.net. Thanks again, and we'll see y'all next time.